All right, welcome to task 2 where we're going to start reflecting a shape over another line. So I'm not translating or moving it, it's really going and flipping on its other side. So a reflection or a flip is how we might refer to it. A flip over a line, which we call the line of reflection. And essentially each point in its image are the same distance from that line. So if I were to fold my graph paper in half, those triangles would line up on top of each other. Some common lines of reflection, some things that we're going to flip over. Our x-axis or our y-axis. This one has been flipped over the y-axis. And so it's going from A to A prime on that side, from C to C prime on that side. They are the same distance away from that y-axis. We'll also do a little bit of flipping over some diagonal lines. So y equals x, so a diagonal line like this, or flipping over the diagonal line y equals negative x, so flipping over just the other direction of that diagonal. And there's a nice little pattern for each of those things. Let's practice a little bit of flipping over our x-axis and our y-axis. What I want you to do before we even start is go ahead and copy down and draw triangle ABC. A is at -4, 2, so I'm going to count over 4 and up 2 and do that for B and C as well. So there is my original image. What I'm going to do is flip it over the x-axis. When I do this, all I'm going to need to do is change my sign of the y value in my ordered pair. So if A is at -4, +2, I'm going to change that y value and I'm going to have my image be at -4, -2. -4, -2. A prime is going to be right there. If B is at 4, 7, I want to change that y value. That 7 is now going to be a -7. I'm going to be at 4, -7. So I'm going to count down 7. 1, 2, 3, 7, and my B prime is right there. Same idea with C. Instead of 5, +1, I'm now going to be at 5, -1. And so I'm going to reflect it over that x-axis. And so now my C is in that negative section of my graph paper. And so that is my new image. Similarly, if we reflect something over the y-axis, we're going to actually just change the sign of my x value. Let's start by go ahead and graphing PQRS. Take a moment and graph all 4 of those points. So I have my 4 points PQRS, and what I'm going to do is reflect it over this y-axis. So I'm actually going to change the sign of my x values so that all of my x values become negative. Flip over to this side. So when P is 1, 2, I'm actually going to have -1, +2, which gives me this point right here, which I've already kind of drawn. Q is 2, 5. I'm going to actually have -2, 5. So instead of being on this side, it's over here. Q prime is over here. P prime is over here. R is going to be at -8, 3. Instead of +8, 3, I have -8, 3. So R is going to be all the way -8, 3. And S, instead of 7, 0, it's going to be at -7, 0. And so it's going to be all the way over here. And so this is my new rectangle over, now flipped over to the other side of my y-axis. You should be doing number 3 and 4 on your own. So take a minute to do that, and then we'll move on to the next page. On this next page, we are going to start flipping over a diagonal line. We are actually going to flip over the line y equals x. Y equals x looks like this diagonal line going across my graph paper. So I'm going to start by just graphing these 3 points, x, y, and z. Take a moment and graph those points. X is -5, -2. Go ahead and graph the rest of them. I'll pause my screen. And so I'll have something look like this. And we're going to take this image and flip it over to this side of my graph paper over that y equals x. The fun thing about this one is there's a real quick rule. Essentially, when I have a reflection over the line y equals x, really in my ordered pair, x and y values switch spots. So if I'm given x comma y, what I'm going to have in my answer for my ordered pair is really y comma x, and I'm going to graph that new ordered pair. So if I have x is supposed to be -5, -2, when it flips and reflects over that line, I'm going to actually have a new ordered pair of -2, -5. So if I graph that -2, -1, 3, 4, 5, my x prime is down here. It has flipped over that axis. Y is -3, 4. I'm going to flip that round to be 4, -3, and that's what I'm going to graph. I'm going to go to the right 4 and down 3. That is my new y prime. It has flipped from here to here across that line. Z is -1, 1. Well, I'm going to flip that around. It's going to be +1, -1. So now I'm going to go to the right 1, down 1. Here's my new Z. It has perfectly flipped over that y equals x line. And so those are my new points. We're going to do the same idea over here. I want you to try on your own. I'm going to leave it on for a few seconds for you to try on your own, and then I'm going to show the answer. So try on your own, and then check your answer in 5 seconds. Here's my original image, and here's my reflected image. And so yours should look similar to that. We're going to move down to number 11, which is now reflecting over the line y equals -x. Y equals -x is just a diagonal line in the opposite direction. It looks like this. And so let's go ahead and start by drawing the shape ABCD, which looks like this. And when I have a y equals -x reflection, in that case, our x and y values do switch spots again. So x and y values switch spots, and they also change signs. So they're going to, if they were positive, they're going to be negative. If they were negative, they're going to become positive. So whatever I'm given in my original ordered pair, it's going to flip-flop in kind of 2 ways. So if A is -1, 3, that's going to switch around and become 3, but instead of a +3, I'm now going to write a -3. Instead of a -1, I'm now going to write a +1. 3, -3, +1. That would give me my A prime. B is 0, 6. They're going to flip-flop. That +6 is going to start my ordered pair and become a -6. And the 0 becomes the y spot. I can't really write -0, so we just leave it as 0. 3 and 5, that +5 is now going to become a -5 at the beginning, and that +3 is now going to become a -3 at the end. D, those two switch, and they both change to a -2. And so I want to graph all 4 of those points. -6, 0 is my new B prime. -5, -3 is my new C prime, and -2, -2 is my new D prime. And so this is my reflection. So take your time. Let's do the same thing for number 12. Go ahead and graph S, T, and U, which looks like this. And then take a moment and let's write down your new ordered pairs and see if you can flip number 12. I'll show my answer in about 5 seconds. And so these are your answers. The 6 and the 1 flip around, they both become positive. The 0 and 3 flip around, that 3 becomes positive. 3 goes to the end and becomes negative. 4 goes to the beginning and becomes positive, and it creates this reflection. The last quick section is just identifying the line of reflection. And the easiest way to do this is to kind of actually just think about your 4 different options of your lines, of either your y-axis or your x-axis or your diagonal line or your negative diagonal line. And you got to be thinking about which line can I draw in between these 2 images. Well, right off the bat, I see that they are just split down the middle by my y-axis. That is the line of reflection. Sometimes they're not split down the middle. They're not reflected across the y, or they're not reflected across the x. Instead, they're reflected across the diagonal. In this case, they're reflected across that negative diagonal. Y equals negative x. So in here, if I look at my y or my x-axis, there's no flipping over my y or my x-axis. Instead, I'm having this negative line go through. So I'm flipping across the line y equals x. And my last one, it looks a little bit funky, but I'm not reflecting across the y-axis. I'm reflecting across the x-axis. And so those are all your possible examples of your lines of reflection. That is it. Your assignment is to finish this packet today.